Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 363. It might take a year, it might take a day, but what is meant to be will always find a way. Anonymous.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. If you want to pre-order the book, just head over to filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. It will be available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook on December 2nd. Now, guys, today on the show, we are going to talk about the death of traditional film distribution. I know that is a very big statement, but I will, in the course of this episode, break down what I think. Well, not what I think, what I know is happening currently and what will be happening in the future and how you as independent filmmakers will be able to succeed and thrive in the future. So I was at AFM this past week and I went there about 4 days and I met a ton of filmmakers. So everybody that I met at AFM that came up to me and talked to me about their projects and just wanted to say hi, I truly, truly appreciate it. You guys made this AFM so educational, so much fun, and I truly, truly appreciate it. So shout out to all the tribe members who talked to me and met with me at the American Film Market. Now, in this AFM, I had the pleasure of talking to a lot of distributors and sales agents and really got a pulse of what is going on in the traditional film distribution space today, right now. And what I discovered was fairly shocking, but not surprising, if that makes any sense whatsoever. The more and more I spoke to distributors and sales agents and people in the business, the more I realized that many, not all, but many film distributors have no idea how to really, truly generate revenue in today's new distribution model. So let me explain. Before, distributors, especially independent film distributors, mid-level distributors, they had things that they could hang their hat on. You know, there were revenue streams that they knew they can count on. So if it wasn't home video or VHS sales, then it turned into the DVD boom of the late 90s and early 2000s, where people were just making obscene amounts of money on DVD. It was cable deals where you could get cable pay deals, free TV to cable deals. And there were just other, theatrical was a guarantee for a lot of smaller independent films. There were just things that they can count on to generate revenue for the titles that they represented. But as one by one, those dominoes started to fall, which home video sales and rentals and purchases are just in a decline. DVD in general is gone, really, other than maybe for the major studios. But even then, a lot of the money that was being made in DVD is now gone. Distributors are no longer making the crazy amounts of money they were in yesteryear because now the habits of the consumer have changed so rapidly. We all now watch a lot more streaming content. We watch more, cable is being taken out of the match. I mean, people are cutting the cords by 5 to 10% a quarter. So satellite and cable networks are starting to go down because there's just not as much revenue anywhere. Advertising dollars are now going towards AVOD and Facebook and YouTube, and television is just not what it was before. So those revenue streams are starting to dry up as well. And with this desperation, I literally had conversations with distributors, and I said, you guys really have no clear idea on how to generate revenue. And I was told, off the record, of course, by certain distributors, they're like, yeah, we're literally throwing up anything we can against the wall to see what sticks. Because everything is changing so rapidly, almost on a monthly basis. It's insane where last year's big key word that I kept hearing at AFM was OTT, which is basically streaming platforms, to this year, which was all about AVOD, advertising video on demand, where Tubi and Pluto and a few other platforms are starting to really grow and become players in the space. The things are changing so rapidly that they have no control. You have to understand that distributors have really no control of the end point for the content that they represent, generally speaking, okay? Because they're middlemen. They're basically gatekeepers of your content going towards the platforms. And that's what aggregators are, and that's what distributors are. They're basically middlemen. One, you pay for that access. Another one, you take a back-end deal to get into that access. And we'll talk a little bit more about those back-end deals in a minute. We all know what happened with distributor and what the potentials of working with an aggregator are. I don't think it's going to happen rampantly. I don't think all these aggregators are going to start, screwing over filmmakers left and right. I don't think, but there is a potential there until some change happens. But what I'm trying to impress upon you is that before, distributors could build out, buy 10,000 DVDs, like produce 10,000 DVDs and sell that product directly to Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Amazon, and they can sell that product and get a return. And there was a real guarantee in regards to you sold the product for wholesale, you would get a return, that's how much money you would make. You would get that money back. In today's world, there's no guarantee anymore. You put them up on these platforms and maybe you'll make money with them. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll get some rentals. Maybe you won't. The days of guaranteed return on investment for a distributor is pretty much gone. There are options of foreign sales still lingering, and there's definitely growth in the foreign international markets. Honestly, that's the only place that there is real growth in these emerging markets like China, like India, and so on. But even figuring out how to make money in those territories is challenging because they're still trying to figure it out. I want you guys to be very clear about this. The distribution world, the film distribution world, they don't know what the hell they're doing either. They're trying to figure this out as much as you're trying to figure out how to make money with your movie. Honestly, they might be more educated. They might have some more context than you, but they're still trying to figure it out. I saw it firsthand. So because of this kind of desperation on trying to figure out what the hell's going on, the new play is that film distributors are trying to acquire as many titles as they can, because the bigger their library is, the more negotiating power they have with a Tubi, a Pluto, an Amazon, because they can walk in and go, hey, I got 2,000 movies in my library. Let's talk. And that's the way they're able to do it. These distributors have smaller runs that are not niche-based, by the way. There are some great distributors that are niche-based that are doing extremely well, like Terra Films, Joe Dane from Terra Films, who they focus on the horror niche, or there's other niches, distributors that are more niche-based. They're doing better than the broad spectrum distributors out there because they can't compete. They don't know how to compete. They don't know how to make the revenue that they need to make to keep their doors open. So because of that, there's been more and more predatory activity where these distributors are throwing out ridiculous deals for filmmakers who are picking them up, and they're picking up content left or right. It's almost like an arms race to see how much independent content that they can grab and put in their library. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. They just need titles. They want titles. That's all they care about. And it's becoming more and more desperate because these film distributors are trying to make the old model still work. They're trying to figure out what to do because everything that they know is now gone. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Or it's changed so rapidly that they don't have a grasp on it. This exact same thing happened in the publishing world. This exact same thing happened in the music world. When technology came and disrupted those two industries, the big players, the establishment, they crumbled. And that is what's slowly happening in our world. I met a filmmaker who came up to me at AFM and threw out this deal that she was offered by a sales agent. And I've heard of predatory distribution deals before, but this is it was so awe-inspiring that I needed to bring it up to you. This filmmaker, who by the way did not take this deal, was offered a 20-year deal for her $200,000 or $300,000 movie. 20-year deal with a marketing cap of $50,000 a year. So that would have been $1 million marketing spend cap. And, oh, by the way, no money up front and a 20-year deal. And when she went back and pushed, I'm like, this doesn't seem really fair. He's like, oh, okay, let's just do 10 years and 2 years of expenses. So literally, he was literally admitting in the negotiations how much he was about to screw this filmmaker. And I heard these stories again and again and again at AFM. It was just, I was speechless every day that I went there. And I listened to filmmaker stories and I listened to distributors and how they were doing business. It's just, you can smell the desperation coming from a lot of these distributors. They just don't know what to do. One thing I really did come away from this year's AFM was that there were many films that were 300, 500,000 or more budgeted films, independent films, that had zero market value. Let me repeat that really quickly. There were $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 budgeted independent films that had literally zero market value because of genre, because of production, because of cast that they were doing, because of the concept as far as if it was niche or non-niche, all of those. I literally saw film after film that literally had zero market value. And I would talk to distributors and said, well, how about this kind of film? They're like, that is absolutely worthless to us. I don't care if it's $1 million production. There is no place for it right now. We would offer them a straight up deal, no MG, and maybe if we're lucky, we can make a couple bucks off of it. And maybe if we're lucky, the filmmaker would get a couple bucks out of it. And that would be the end of story. I wanted to do this episode because I want to impress upon you guys so much that the world has changed. And what I've noticed is that many, if not most independent filmmakers that I deal with on a daily basis are making films for the 90s and early 2000s marketplace. Please let me repeat that. Most independent filmmakers are making films for the 90s and early 2000s marketplace, not the data-driven, niche-driven world we live in today. That is astonishing to me that you would invest $500,000 and not understand if you even have a market to go sell this movie, what the market wants right now, it not understanding the marketplace in general. I know this episode is going to probably make a lot of filmmakers' heads explode, and I hope it does because I want you guys to wake up to understand that if you're going to invest a large sum of money, even if it's $50,000 or $100,000 of your budget, you best know where you're going to be able to sell this movie. And in today's world, because things are changing so much, it's even harder to actually make money with films today. The platforms, the rising phoenixes in these ashes of traditional distribution and the traditional old studio model are the platforms, the Amazons, the Amazon's, Netflix, Hulu's, Tubi's, Pluto, all of these platforms, that they're having the power. They're the ones coming up. Smart platforms like Disney Plus, and also Warner Brothers, and now NBC Universal's Peacock, they're all bringing up their own platforms. I'm not sure how much the independent film world is going to be helped by this situation, but there are now, they're pretty late to the table, but there are now the studios are starting to try to get into this direct to consumer model and not going through a middleman, because believe it or not, the studios still go through a middleman. That middleman were movie theaters. That was a middleman that cut out their profits, that cut out 50% of the take, 60% of the take, 30, 40% of the take on theatrical releases. Then they had to deal with DVD manufacturer and getting it out through there was always a middleman, even for the studios. But now, in today's world, they're able to go directly to the consumer. So they could cut out all the middleman completely, put up a streaming platform. And trust me, from someone who just bought the Disney Plus subscription for a year, because it's amazing, it's awesome, and I have kids, so it's great. I could already see what's going to happen. And it's already happening. There's a Melissa McCarthy movie, I think, coming out it was supposed to come out in theaters, but now it's going to come out directly in Warner Brothers' new streaming platform instead of going to the theaters. And that's happening again and again. They're going to be instead of direct to the DVD market, they're going to direct to the streaming platforms. Lady and the Tramp, Noelle, these are two big movies that were made specifically for Disney Plus, not for theatrical. They could have gone theatrical with both of those movies, and both of those movies would probably have done well theatrically. Netflix's last year, that the Christmas Chronicle, or I think it was the Christmas Chronicles or something like that, the one that Kurt Russell starred as Santa, that was a huge, like $100 million plus Christmas movie that could have done big box office. But they went directly to their users, and they were fine. They did fine. The platforms aren't buying winners of the Cannes Film Festival and the Sundance Film Festival and Tribeca. They don't care. I promise you, I saw it a few years ago. I was at Sundance, and I saw where Amazon was buying up anybody that got into Sundance. They were buying up Cannes and Tribeca and South by Southwest winners. Are there films that are still purchased in those in those festivals? Of course there are. But they don't carry the punch of the new world of distribution. The new world of distribution is based around data. Okay, I want you to understand that. It is driven by data. Content is driven by data. It is the Googleification of the movie industry. The platforms are looking to fill holes in their portfolio of content for their customers. And what do I mean by holes? Well, all of these platforms are aiming at certain demographics and certain niches. There's that word again, niche. They're aiming for those niches that fill a hole because they want you to be watching their platform as much as possible. So they'll create an avatar. I talk about this in my book, but they create an avatar of the perfect customer. So, perfect example, I'm going to use myself. I'm looking for a man in his early to mid 40s who loves either sports movies or they love comic book films, and they're also interested in surfing documentaries or vegan documentaries or things of those natures. So they want to fill each of those interests for my age group as much as humanly possible, so I can continue to keep a subscription with them and also keep coming back and watching more and more hours. They understand that a perfect customer only has X amount of hours a day that they use to watch movies. So someone of my age range that's working generally is going to have 4 to 5 hours of TV time if they're lucky. So they're looking, I'm like, okay, what can we create to get Alex to watch our channel and subscribe to our channel? What's the kind of show that we can create for them? What's the kind of movies? What kind of series can I create for them? So they're always looking for that thing to fill that model, to fill that little hole that they have. So a perfect example is that new documentary that came out on Netflix called Game Changers. Game Changers is a vegan documentary about vegan athletes. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And the power of, plant-based diets in world-class athletes, which is a new take on the whole, plant-based documentary. And Netflix paid an obscene amount of money for it because Game Changers, in the first 2 weeks that it was out on iTunes, became the #1 documentary ever to sell or rent on iTunes purely because of the need of that niche and people wanting to know more about plant-based and all that kind of stuff. Well, Netflix bought it and it filled a wonderful hole for them. But understand something, that hole, once I watch that hour-and-a-half documentary, needs to be filled again. So that is why there's an arm race as well for content, for filling content in those niche holes again and again and again and again. So they need to constantly be filling that hole because once I watch that show or once I watch that movie, I need to fill that hole again. And there is truly a shortage, according to the platforms, a shortage of high-end talent in Hollywood. I know that sounds insane, right? But if you think about how many hours they need to fill of content, it's maddening. It really is maddening. There's literally, I think, 3 years of time created last year in content. So I did the math, and it's almost 26,000 hours of content that was created. Not YouTube content. I'm talking about content built for the streaming platforms. All of them. How many hundreds of streaming platforms there are out there. So that's 26,000 hours. If you have one high-end showrunner, let's say Ryan Murphy or Shonda Rhimes or J.J. Abrams, how many hours of really good, high-quality series or movies can they make in a year? 20 episodes for a showrunner, if they're lucky. Maybe if they're show running 2 shows, maybe 40. And that's like extreme, right? There's very few people that can do that. And even then, it doesn't even dent the need for new content because content is being absorbed so rapidly now that it is a commodity. Films are being watched and then it's gone, and watched and then it's gone, and series are being binged and then they're done. Like I love Breaking Bad, but the chances of me going back and watching the entire series of Breaking Bad again is probably gone. I probably won't do it because there's too much good, brand new good content being produced daily. So filmmakers need to understand this when they're creating their product. Right now, there is a gold rush for high-end directors, writers, producers, and showrunners going on right now. Netflix, Amazon, they're all vying for the big, directors and writers and showrunners. They're spending obscene amounts of money to attract and keep them in their stable. It is insane. So I'm going to give you an example. The $200 million Irishman. Martin Scorsese's new film with Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci about the Irish mob. No studio would fund that film for Martin Scorsese. You're talking about multiple Oscar winners and legends, and they would not give it to them because that is not the business model that the studios do anymore. The Irishman has no potential for Irishman lunchboxes, Irishman t-shirts, or Irishman figures, action figures, though I personally would purchase a Irishman action figure, and I know a handful of us would in the tribe. But with that said, it doesn't fit the model of what the studios are doing in today's world. This hyper realistic, Marvel Cinematic Universe or properties, big tentpole properties that are based on books, toys, or IPs that already exist in the lexicon, in the zeitgeist of popular culture. That is what the studios have turned to. By the way, before I continue that, if you've noticed what studios have flourished in this new studio model system of the cinematic universes, of the IPs and things based on books and toys and so on. The ones that haven't done very well are Sony Pictures, who own very little, if any, major tentpole properties other than, I think Sony owns Men in Black, which they just released a new one and it died. James Bond, which is a great brand, but that's one. And I think, that Spider-Man thing that they were able to finagle out of Marvel years ago. And I'm reading a new book called The Big Picture by Ben Fritz, and I'm trying to get Ben on the show. And in there, he talks all about a lot of the changes of what happened in Hollywood. But I found out in that book that that Sony literally had the opportunity to license and own basically the movie rights to all of the Marvel characters. Sony could right now be the juggernaut that Disney became. But because they did not see, hey, look, hindsight is, everyone can be a Monday morning quarterback, but they said, no, nobody's going to watch a movie about Iron Man, Thor, or Captain America. Just get us to write the Spider-Man. And that's what they did. They got the rights to Spider-Man, and that was the end of it. So Sony doesn't have anything. And then you look at Paramount, another major player, or was a major player in the studio system. They don't own anything really other than Transformers, right? Transformers. And they also had a distribution deal with some of the Marvel stuff, but that went away. So they've struggled as well. And the world of the movie star driving box office or driving sales is pretty much gone. Will Smith's latest Gemini Man died. There's just so many examples of films that had big stars that just don't go anywhere anymore. Even The Rock, who is The Rock, Skyscraper didn't do well. I think China was the one thing that kind of saved that film. But those days of the $20 million plus paydays for actors, those are gone because it's just too much content. Now audiences will watch movie stars. Don't get me wrong. There's still places for movie stars, but Brad Pitt's new movie, Astar or whatever, that sci-fi movie, that died, but the movie star has to be in a vehicle that makes sense. And there's very few original vehicles being created. Tarantino's, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was a big hit because of Tarantino and the combination of Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio in that kind of story. Those are rare instances. Those days are gone. The movie star days are almost gone as well. So let me get back to the Irishman example. So Netflix spent $200 million because it went over $40 million over budget because Marty is Marty and they gave him full reign to do whatever he wanted. And he did. And he spent $200 million on his opus, his truly opus film. And this is Netflix's attempt to win an Oscar. And not because the Oscar is going to bring that much obscene amount of money back to them, but it will attract high-end creators to the platform because it will get a reputation of being a creator-friendly platform. And if you can get high-end creators in your stable making content for your platform, you will have a much better chance of winning the streaming wars. So there is a land grab for big high-end creators. So I wanted you to understand why Netflix would spend $200 million. Will they make their money back off of people watching it? I don't know. No one knows what goes on behind the scenes as far as their data because no one knows. So I know what you're thinking. Now go, Alex, well, this is all fantastic. I'm so glad that you've depressed me today. What chance do I have as an independent filmmaker making a $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 movie in today's world? What chance do I have? The chance that you have is the power of the niche. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again. The riches are in the niches. The future of filmmaking for independent filmmakers, and I will debate this with anybody who wants to debate this, is the entrepreneurial filmmaker. It is a filmmaker who understands their audience and creates product for their audience and then builds ancillary product lines and services or services for that audience. Now, you need to become one of two kind of independent filmmakers. Both are filmtrepreneurs. Number one is the filmtrepreneur whose end customer for the film is the customer. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. It is direct to the customer, where you create that film, you find a way to put it on either AVOD, SVOD, and TVOD in one way, shape, or form. And that could be multitude of different ways to get that product of the film to the end user without a middleman other than the platforms that you're using to generate sales to get that money. Okay? And two, the filmtrepreneur whose end customer for the film is a platform where you're creating content to fill holes in the portfolios and libraries of existing platforms, whether that be Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, Tubi, there's so many different platforms, but you need to figure that out. And that could be niche-based, whether it's like spiritual or faith-based films for Pure Flix, or films like for Hallmark and Lifetime. You're creating product for those niche portfolios or libraries for those platforms. And by the way, you could arguably still create ancillary revenue streams from those films, even if they've been sold or licensed to different platforms. And it all depends on the deal and how you structure the deal. But there is still a lot of potential there as well. So that is the future of independent filmmaking. That is what you need to be able to do. You need to become that filmtrepreneur. You need to understand the ever-changing marketplace. You do not want to be Blockbuster and be left behind because you didn't see what was coming around the corner. You do not want to be the music labels that went under because they did not embrace the new technology and the new habits of their customers. I know so many of you are filmmakers and artists, and I just want to express myself and make a movie. I don't want to think about the business. Man, that is great. And I wish you the best of luck with that. I truly do. You know, if you want to do experimental films or films that really just fulfill your heart, my God, please go do it. But man, if you don't have the money to do it at the level you want to do it at, you got to figure something out. And it's irresponsible of you to con some poor dentist out of $100,000 to go make your opus that you know in your heart you're never going to sell. And don't give me the, hopefully it'll get to Sundance and get bought and blah, blah, blah. That's a lottery ticket, man. That's not a business model. You've got to really understand how you're going to be able to recoup that money. Now, if you make your movies for really low budgets like I do, be as experimental as you want. You want to make a movie for $5 or $10,000 and you can afford to lose $5 or $10,000? Dude, it's a hobby. You're a hobbyist. That's fine. You're a hobby filmmaker because you're not a professional filmmaker. Professional filmmakers do this as a living. You're doing it as one-offs every once in a while, and you really don't care about making money. That's not a profession. That's a hobby. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But you have to understand that if you want to make a living at this, you really need to understand the business of this. And now more than ever, the business is changing so rapidly that if you're making a movie now thinking you're going to sell it the way I'm talking about right now in a year, you're mistaken. So how do you kind of hedge your bets? Is to keep the budgets as low as humanly possible and hold on to things that you think that can actually generate revenue for you. That's why I continue to preach the filmtrepreneur method, the method of controlling your revenue streams without just giving your movie away to a middleman in hopes that one day this predatory film distributor is actually going to pay you. And I've said it before and I say it again, there are good distributors out there and there are distributors who are trying to do well by their filmmakers, but they are rare. The baseline for this industry is that there are predatory distributors out there. And then every once in a while, the oddity is the good film distributor. the good sales agent who's trying to help you actually make money with your film. They are rare, guys. I just don't care what anyone tells me. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've talked to enough people to understand that the baseline for film distributors is that they're predatory and they're there to screw you. But there are people out there who are not going to do that, but they are the outliers. They are the exception to the rule. And as things start to tighten, tighter and tighter, and again, I've said this before, we're in good economic times right now. When the fit hits the shan and something happens economically like it did in 2007 and 8, then watch what happens. But right now, as things continue to tighten, as the revenue streams from the traditional business model of film distribution continues to strangle the distributors, they will become more and more predatory. They will become more and more one-sided in their deals, and filmmakers will have less and less opportunities to actually make a dime on their films unless they start taking control of their own product and their own IPs and their own films and go directly to the consumer of a niche audience. You have to become entrepreneurial filmmakers or filmtrepreneurs. There's no other way around it. That is my belief. I will continue to preach that belief as long as I can, because I do really think that in today's world, there is more opportunity than ever for filmmakers, for video and content creators, video creators than ever before. It has never been easier to make a movie in the history of this industry. But it's never been more difficult to make money and to get people to actually watch your films. That is the new reality of not only the film industry, but of independent film. You can make a beautiful film, but man, it's hard to actually make money with that film or actually to get anyone to see that film. That's why you need to change as filmmakers. You need to become filmtrepreneurs to be able to survive and thrive in this new world. And I promise you, if like they say in a lot of high-end schools like Harvard or law schools or even Navy SEAL training, look to your left, look to your right. One of you is not going to make it through. And I don't want that for you guys, for the tribe, for people who listen to what I say, follow what I do. I want you guys to survive. I want you guys to thrive in this new world that we're walking into in the film industry. People are still worried about, oh, look at the cool lens I got and look at the new 25K camera resolution I got. But no one's talking about how to make money with your film, how to survive in this business. Don't let the marketing and don't let the industry lie to you. You need to understand the realities that you're walking into. I don't want to see you get hurt. I don't want to see your lives just torn down because you invested all your savings or you mortgaged your house in hopes that you were making a movie or a product for a marketplace that's 20 years too late. I don't want to see it. I met too many filmmakers at this AFM that I ran across that had that literally had zero market value or very little market value or any chance at all to break even with their films. And it's heartbreaking, and I don't want it to happen anymore. So that's why I decided to make this episode, to really sound the alarm so you guys can really understand where we are at right now and where we are going. Now, I'm going to leave you with this, that I was talking to an industry insider who will remain nameless. He's anonymous. And they were telling me about what one of these platforms, which will remain nameless as well, does to create content. And what they do is they bring in audience members, people, to one of their theaters in their offices, and they sit them down and they literally have those kind of like avatar visual effects cameras aimed at them. So the camera is recording all their micro expressions, recording their emotional responses to the film. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. And then this is the scary thing that I just couldn't believe, but I do believe 110%. That with that information, there is an AI that records every little bit of information and translates that into a report that tells the producers or the platforms what works, what doesn't work, and what needs to be there in order for it to be a success. And they take those notes back to the filmmakers and said, you need this, more jokes like this, less jokes like that, more action hits like this, more scares like that. It's literally what Hitchcock was saying years ago, where he's like, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just plug everybody into a piano and hit a note and make them cry, and hit a note and make them jump, and hit a note and make them laugh? That's where we're going, guys. We're going into this data-driven filmmaking world, and we're not going into it. We are there. It is happening as we speak. It is terrifying in many ways because as an artist, you just want to express yourself. And I think there'll always be a place for artists to be able and filmmakers to be able to express themselves through this medium in whichever way they want to, but the budgets will have to come way down. And film studios and the platforms aren't going to take as many risks as before, unless you're one of these high-end, proven hit makers. The world is a-changing, ladies and gentlemen. The world is a-changing, and I want you guys, as members of the Indie Film Hustle tribe, as the Filmtrepreneur tribe, and the Bulletproof Screenwriting tribe, to understand the rules of engagement when you walk into this business. And the one thing that was constant throughout AFM was every filmmaker that I walked into and met there, which were there were many, almost all of them asked me, when is your book out? When is your book out, Alex? I need to read this book. I need to read The Rise of the Filmtrepreneur. And as I said earlier in this episode, it is coming out December 2nd. It will be available paperback as well as ebook and audiobook. And I will show you how to get the audiobook version for free if you've never had an Audible account before. And I'll give you all that information as we get closer to it. But guys, again, I really hope that this episode has opened your mind and also opens your interest in learning about the business. Man, because if you don't understand this business, you won't make it, guys. You just won't. You won't make it because the world that you might be making movies for is gone. You really need to understand the marketplace now. You really need to understand who's buying, why people are buying, how people are watching, what products are people purchasing, how you have to change your mentality on how you make your movies. If not, you will be a hobbyist if you're lucky, and you won't get to the next level. You will never be able to make a living doing what you love to do. And that is my goal for everyone who hears my voice. And if their interest is to make a living doing this, it is my goal in life to show you how to do it. Now, if you want links to anything I talked about in this episode, including the book I am currently reading, which is mind-blowing, and it is mandatory reading for any Filmtrepreneur or Indie Film Hustle Tribe member, The Big Picture by Ben Fritz. You definitely have to check it out. Just head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/363. Thanks again, guys. And again, if you want to pre-order the book, just head over to filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. I hope this episode was of value to you. I really hope it changes the way you think about making movies and how you're going to approach creating your art, creating your films, series, and content in the future. Thanks for listening, guys. Oh, and by the way, please share this with every filmmaker you know. Share this episode because this information needs to get out to everybody. So if you've got a filmmaker that you know that needs this information, please share this episode. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for listening, guys. As always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.